Welcome to the daily news analysis session of Narayana IS Academy. Today, as part of this DNA, we are going to deal with most important articles from The Hindu and Indian Express. We'll be dealing with them in a comprehensive manner, considering the relevance for the examination. Now, before we start, a quote or a motivational quote for all of you. Education is not the learning of the facts, but the training of the mind to think. Most of the people, they think that when you think about education, it is just about learning, just going from standard first to 10th and then getting ahead with their graduation. This is not education. Education means when your mind gets trained to think, when your mind gets trained to question. When you think, then you will get the knowledge. So overall, education is not supposed to give you knowledge. You are supposed to get knowledge on your own by thinking. Okay, so with this quote, let's start with our session. So some kind of notification related to the courses that are open at Narayana IS Academy. For those students who are going to attempt the examination in the year 2026, 1 year prelims cum mains integrated course, and for those who are going to attempt it in the 2027, 2 year prelims cum mains integrated course. Now the details of this course is provided over here. So for example, 800 plus hours of general studies and CSAT online classes, 200 hours of current affairs lectures, then a micro schedule which is prepared strategically to ensure that entire syllabus gets covered holistically. So that micro schedule will be provided to you. Then expert faculties are there, testing mechanism is there. You'll be solving so many tests. For example, 4,000 plus prelims practice questions, 1,000 plus mains practice questions as part of this course. And the program will include many other aspects to ensure that your selection is guaranteed. So moving ahead with this, let's start with our articles of the day. So we have picked up these 4 articles. First article is related to mental health. Although nowadays we are talking a lot about mental health because many people are complaining that their physical health is relatively better, but their mental health is not at all good. And anyway, this mental health will be linked to your physical health anyway. Now, the second article is related to ethanol. Government of India is talking about blending of ethanol with your petrol. So, what is the target and what government is doing right now? We'll understand that. The third article is related to India's shipping industry. Now, shipping industry has a really good potential. So, we'll understand the status right now which is happening. And the fourth article is about forest land in India. In India, we see a debate between development and conservation, whether we should go ahead with development projects like road, infrastructure, etc., or should we protect our forests? So this is the question. So here we'll understand some part of it, as Supreme Court has given this particular statement that do not reduce forest land just for the sake of some linear projects, which includes your road, infrastructure, etc. Now, let's start with the first article, eliminating elitism in mental health. Now, mental health is important for you, and this entire article will be focusing even on the labor codes. So the labor codes are also important for you to study. So article is important for prelims as well as mains. Now before this, please go through this previous year question. Public health system has limitation in providing universal health coverage. Do you think that private sector can help in bridging the gap? What other viable alternatives do you suggest? Now this question is specifically focusing on this universal health coverage aspect, and the role of private sector is being questioned. So health as an overall topic is important. As part of your GS2 syllabus also it is mentioned, and as part of health, mental health is also important. Now what has happened recently? A report was published by Ministry of Labour and Employment. The name of that report is Year End Review Report. Now under this report, it is said that the labor code, the new labor code which is being created, which is being developed, or rather being consolidated by Government of India. The draft rules for these labor codes are about to get complete by March 31st, 2025. See, in India, we have so many labor laws. So Government of India thought that instead of having so many laws, we will consolidate them into just 4 labor codes. That's a good idea. That's a reform. Now the draft rules for these 4 labor codes, they are being prepared by the ministries, and right now we are saying March 31st is the deadline by which these rules will be completely made and published. Now, writer of this article is saying that if you look at these labor laws which are already existing with us, these labor laws talk about the aspect of health, but they just focus on physical health or physical well-being. And these labor codes do not explicitly talk about mental health or mental well-being. So this is the core essence of this article. Now, when we talk about mental health, what do we mean by it? So there is a definition given by World Health Organization. WHO defines mental health as a state of mental well-being that enables individuals to cope with life stresses, realize their potential, work efficiently and contribute to society. So if I have to simplify it, many people think that when we are defining mental health, it means not having any mental illness. But that will be a negative definition and that will not be a complete comprehensive definition. So obviously, a person not having any kind of mental illness, but as well as that person should have mental well-being also. Whatever potential that person can achieve, he should remain capable of that. He should realize that. So if you're burdened with lot of work, lot of mental pressure, you're still not having any mental illness, but your mental health is not good. But when your mental health is good, you can work really efficiently, you can realize your potential, you can contribute to society, all that thing can be done. So this is the comprehensive definition given by WHO. Now we can see mental health of many people is not in a good condition, or rather it is very much disturbed. For example, right now we see since the year 1990, there is a concern in the global health experts. The health experts around the world are saying that since 1990, the number of cases related to mental health or mental disorders are continuously increasing, and this trend is not at all good. Now, here is a data related to this National Mental Health Survey 2015 to 2016. The data says 10.6% of Indian adults, they suffer from mental disorders. So just imagine 10% of the entire population of India. Obviously, Indian adults, they are saying they are suffering from mental disorder, some kind of mental disorder. That's the reason we are discussing mental health. Okay. Now, World Health Organization has provided us or has identified some of the workplace mental health risks, because most of these adults, they're having this mental health issue because of some kind of burden that they have at their workplace. Wherever they work, there is some pressure over there. So these are the 5 conditions or 5 things which are leading to mental health disorders. For example, excessive workload and rapid work pace. So many people, they suffer from this part, that the workload is very high, or they have to work very in a very speedy manner. Then they have long and inflexible working hours. So right now there is even a debate going on to increase the working hours. And already there are many people, especially those people who are working in informal sector. Let's say, for example, if you look at some people who are working as construction workers, their working hours are very long and there is no flexibility. They cannot take work from home. They cannot opt for any personal time as such. Then there are many unsafe working conditions. The working conditions are not really good. People working in hazardous industry, they face many problems. or people working in those rat hole mining, etc., the working condition is not safe at all, because of which stress gets developed, mental condition will be destabilized. Then many people suffer from this problem. Either their wages or salary is very low, or there is job insecurity. They don't know for how long they will be having this job. For example, if you look at gig workers, for example, people working for Zomato, Uber, etc., they suffer from this problem of job insecurity. They are not sure how long their job will continue, or else they are also getting paid but very low amount. And then the fifth major part is conflicting work home demands. So we have responsibilities in our professional terms at our work, but we have some responsibilities at family level. And when they get into conflict, that leads to some mental health issues. So overall, these are the five workplace mental health risks identified by WHO. Now, because of all these five, many workers are affected. But the article is talking about elitism. And why they are talking about elitism? Because here there are two types of workers. One is blue collar worker, and the second one is white collar worker. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, when we say blue collar worker, you can talk about those people who are working on ground, who are doing some kind of manual labor. For example, I gave the example of a construction worker. You can call them blue collar workers. Those people who are working in factories, those who are working where physical work is required. The work doesn't require much mental work, rather physical work. So on these parts, whenever we look at such workers, we call them blue collar workers. Whereas there are many people who are working in corporates, private sector, we call them white collar workers. Either they are doing some administrative work, they are doing some managerial work, or they're using their brain, they are doing some intellectual work. Physical work is relatively less, mental work is relatively high. Those workers are called white collar workers. Now, what this article is specifically saying is that although these all problems are there with respect to all the workers, but at least these white collar workers, those who are working in the corporates, they have some mechanism to help them deal with these mental health issues, to make their mental health relatively better. But in case of these blue collar workers, there is no such mechanism. There is no mechanism which ensures that their mental health improves. So this is the core thing that we need to focus. So just to give you an example why I'm saying that in corporates we are taking care of the mental health of people, at least some care. So we have some examples. For example, you can see Infosys Hail program or Wipro's Mitra initiative. There are many other companies who are running such programs wherein they try to provide some kind of counseling or some kind of initiative is taken so that mental well-being is ensured. Okay. Now, if we look at the legal frameworks in India that govern the labor laws and mental health. So first of all, we have our constitution. If you look at the Article 21 of the Constitution, it talks about right to life and personal liberty. The Supreme Court of India has interpreted the meaning of right to life and personal liberty in different manner. One of that includes right to mental well-being. So under Article 21, you have the right to mental well-being. It's a fundamental right. Then if you look at the directive principles of state policy, DPSP. So we have Article 39E, we have Article 42 that also talks about mental health. For example, 39E protect workers from conditions that may affect their health and strength. So when you talk about health, this is a broader term which will include mental health also. Then Article 42 directs the state to ensure just and humane working conditions. And we already said, when WHO also talked about this thing, that if your working condition is not good, then obviously your mental health will be affected. So providing humane and just working condition is also the responsibility of your state. Okay, so these are the constitutional provisions that are available. Now, if we look at the labor code or labor laws, I said that government is consolidating all the labor laws into four codes. First code is Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code 2020. Second code is Code on Social Security 2020. Then Industrial Relations Code 2020 and Wage Code 2019. So all the laws, all the labor laws are consolidated into these four codes. Now, if we specifically talk about each and every code, you will see that mental health is not explicitly mentioned in these codes. For example, if we take this first one, Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code. So, definition of occupational safety, which is provided in this particular code, it again includes physical well-being and it doesn't include mental well-being. For example, you can take the example of this section 6(1)(d). This same thing will be observable. Similarly, if you see this code, Code on Social Security, if you see the compensation under section 74, it says that in case you are having any physical injury, in that case you will be provided with some kind of compensation. Some kind of compensation. Now, this injury can be a result of any kind of occupational disease. Now, this is what is exactly mentioned here, but this doesn't include, when you look at this occupational disease, there is a list of occupational disease given in the third schedule of this particular code. And if we see that particular list, it does not include any of the mental health disorder. So that means even government doesn't consider that any mental disorder which may come from the job itself, that is not an occupational disease. So this article overall is criticizing this aspect of the labor code or labor laws in India. Then if you look at the industrial relations code, similar thing will be there. For example, we have worker grievance redressal committee which will be there, but there is no mention of mandatory mental health expert to be part of this grievance redressal committee. Similarly, if you look at the wage code, there is no specific mention of stress related absenteeism, overwork or burnout. This is not mentioned. You're just saying that some minimum wages should be provided to people. All those things will be there. So overall, mental health is not being considered. Now, if we look at the international convention, so we have International Labour Organization and many conventions from International Labour Organization. For example, convention number 155, it says Occupational Safety and Health 1981. Now, this convention specifically says that for mental well-being, holistic approach is required and every country should go ahead with a holistic approach. Similarly, we have convention number 187. It says that all the countries should update their labor laws so that people working in their workplaces, their mental well-being is ensured. So it shows internationally, when we are ratifying such conventions, when we are a part of International Labour Organization, it is the responsibility of our state to take actions and to update labor laws. Okay. Then WHO has also given some guidelines for the mental health at work. So we have already discussed the things that are already identified by WHO. What all factors are leading to the mental disorders. So after that disorders, they have also given some guidelines. Now moving ahead, if we talk about some of the government initiatives that are existing. For example, we have National Mental Health Program of 1982. So this program wants that mental health care should become accessible to every individual living in India, every citizen of India. Then we have District Mental Health Program 1996. It says that if someone is suffering from any kind of mental disorder, then we should do the diagnosis earlier and we can treat such person. Then we have Mental Health Care Act 2017. It provides the legal framework required to ensure that your health rights or mental health rights are protected. So there is legal framework. Then we have this Kiran helpline, 24 by 7 toll free mental health helpline. Then we have Mano Darpan initiative, which provides some kind of support to the students. So students will be provided with some psychological counsel or psychosocial support. Then we have this Telemanas initiative, free tele mental health service, and this was launched in the year 2022. So there are so many initiatives government has already launched. Now, what remains as a way forward for us? So, first of all, as far as our laws are concerned, or labor laws, labor code is concerned, or our policy is concerned, what all we need to do? First of all, when you look at that third schedule of the CSC code, in that schedule, you can add mental health disorders. That those mental health disorders should also be considered as occupational diseases. This is the first thing. Then you can amend this OSHWC code to explicitly recognize mental well-being, and this is very important. Unless you first recognize that mental well-being is part of the overall health of the workers, you will not take any action. The companies will not take any action. So at the policy level, at the laws, we have to do these amendments. Then as far as this work hour related debate is going on, we should not promote exploitative work hours or working condition at workplaces. For example, people are talking about 70 to 90 hours per week working. So this should not be permitted. There should be some regulation, and mental health awareness programs should be made mandatory in each and every organization, whether it is government organization or private organization, everywhere. Okay. Then you can also create a tripartite framework. Tripartite means there will be three parties. First, government; second, employers; and third, mental health experts. Now, mental health experts are important so that they can act as a bridge between government and employers, and they can reduce the pressure that is getting generated. So, this can be done. Then we can enhance the awareness and accessibility. Already government has launched many programs, so we can bring in some legal obligation, some laws which make it mandatory for companies to provide some kind of mental health counseling to their workers at least. Then we have to eliminate this elitism in mental health. We said that the blue collar workers, they are not getting any support from government or companies or anyone. But at least when we talk about white collar workers, they are getting some support. So this elitism is getting generated, and we have to curb this. So we should eliminate this elitism. So this is all about mental health and the labor laws in India. So we'll start with the next article. Before that, let me check if we have any comments or any doubts. So no doubts. Okay, so we'll move ahead with the next article. So the second article is related to ethanol blending. Ethanol is highly important for your prelims as well as mains. Most important for prelims. Now, you can look at this previous year question of year 2013. I suggest please read this PYQ. I'll give you 10 seconds to read it. Okay. So if you have already read it, it's about the byproducts of sugar industry. Now, specifically, it's talking about sugar industry. So any major industry is important. And when you are reading, when we are talking about ethanol, this is going to be important for the overall economy and not just one particular sector. So we'll understand that part. Now recently, Union Minister Nitin Gadkari, he said that Indian government has already set a target of blending 20% of ethanol in the petrol. This target is already there. Blending means you are mixing ethanol with petrol. So instead of getting petrol in your fuel tank of your bike, we will have 80% petrol and 20% ethanol in it. Now this is the target we already had set up, and India is going to complete it in next 2 months. So in next 2 months, we'll be achieving this entire target. This is the news and this is the reason we are reading about it. Now, first of all, what do we mean by ethanol? Now, when we see this term all, this shows that there is something called alcohol. So ethanol is nothing but a type of alcohol. There is another name for ethanol, that is ethyl alcohol. Its chemical formula is C2H5OH. Okay, and sometimes people even call it grain alcohol or drinking alcohol. Okay, now it's very interesting. Just like petrol, if you have ever seen petrol, petrol is very volatile. You know, as soon as you open up petrol, if you keep it in a box, or let's say there is no lid over it, then the petrol, because it is very volatile, it will start either burning or it will vaporize, right? So similarly, even ethanol is highly volatile. It is also highly flammable. It will burn very quickly, and it is a colorless liquid. So it is very much similar to petrol. Okay, now how this ethanol is produced? So there are two methods. One is a natural method, other one is a synthetic or artificial method. If we look at the production of ethanol through a natural method, then natural method is fermentation. So what you will do, you will take yeast and you will also take sugar. Now sugar can be taken from sugarcane, corn, rice, wheat, molasses. So anything that can provide you with sugar, you can take that thing, and then you will make use of yeast. Now this yeast will break down the sugar into ethanol and carbon dioxide. Now this process is very common. This process is used to make alcoholic beverages, biofuel, even hand sanitizers are made using the same fermentation method. Now this is a natural method. The second method is synthetic method or chemical method. Now here we make use of petroleum based ethene or ethylene, and then we make use of water and we start making a chemical reaction. Now here this ethene, that will react with water in the presence of some kind of catalyst. Now that catalyst could be any kind of acid, let's say phosphoric acid. And after this chemical reaction, this ethanol will automatically be formed over here. Now for normal usage, we do not make use of this chemical method. But in the industries, when we are making this industrial ethanol, there we make use of this synthetic method. We can even make some solvents, we can make even fuels using this same method. So this is how you can produce ethanol. Now what is the use of this ethanol? Already we talked about it, that in sanitizers we might use it, or in alcoholic beverages. But there are many other uses. So if we have to see it comprehensively, first as a fuel, or we call it bioethanol. And this is what we are talking about. For example, we are saying that we are going to blend or mix 20% of ethanol with 80% of petrol and use it as our normal day-to-day fuel for our petrol, for the replacement of our petrol. Now, this is considered to be a very good idea. Now, if you blend 20%, then it will be called as E20. If you blend 10%, it will be called as E10. And it is good because you're reducing the dependence on fossil fuel. Petrol, diesel, all these are petroleum products coming from the crude oil. And these are fossil fuels. We are very much dependent. And first thing is, they are limited sources. After some years, we'll not have fossil fuels available. Second thing, we have to pay a large amount of money as import bill. when we import these fossil fuels. So we want to reduce that. And third, because of this fossil fuel, we are observing that we are emitting lot of carbon dioxide. We are emitting greenhouse gases, because of which global warming, climate change is taking place. We want to reduce that. And one of the solution is to use this ethanol as a fuel instead of petrol. So right now what we are doing is we are just blending it. Okay. Then we can use it in alcoholic beverages. You're making beer, wine, whiskey, or any other alcoholic drink. In that you can make use of ethanol. If you're making any industrial solvent, for example in pharmaceutical industry, cosmetic industry, any paint you are making, any varnish, any perfume you are making, there you will use ethanol. Then medicine and pharmaceuticals, for hand sanitizers, disinfectants, antiseptics, medicinal drugs, for all this you can make use of ethanol. Even you can make some preservatives. There are many preservatives. If you want that you have something which should be preserved for a long time, so you need to add some preservative into it. Such preservatives can also be made using ethanol. Then you can make use of it in the chemical industry. Let's say you're making any acetic acid, ethyl ester, etc. So its precursor will be this ethanol. Then it can be used as antifreeze agent. For example, you can use it as coolant or de-icing fluid for vehicles and aircraft. So these are all the major uses of ethanol. Okay. And many a times UPSC asks question related to application or use of any particular material or liquid. So you should have a brief idea about the application part. Now what we are doing is we are blending this ethanol, which we have already talked about. Now Indian government has set up a target. The target is to blend 20% of ethanol by 2025-2026. This is the target, and interestingly we are about to achieve that target. This is what the union minister is saying. Now to achieve this target we have to produce approximately 1000 crore liter of ethanol every year, and government is saying now we have the capacity to produce this much of ethanol every year. So as of 2024 the data was we reached 13 to 15% of ethanol blending, and now we are about to reach even 20%. And for that Niti Aayog has said that we can make use of sugarcane based ethanol, or we can make use of grain based ethanol distilleries. So this is how we have a good news, we can say. Okay. Now let me check if we have any other comment. No? Okay. Let's move ahead with the third article. Now this article is related to shipping industry. Now this is important for you to study for prelims as well as mains GS paper 3 economy, which also includes infrastructure part. Now you can see this previous year question. This Kamarajar port, Mundra port, Vishakhapatnam port, and basic information about that port is being asked over here. So you should have a brief idea about all the ports and all. Now before moving ahead, please understand why this is in news. So government already had launched a major project or a flagship initiative called Sagarmala. But even after coming up with such a good initiative, what we are saying is that India's shipping industry is still facing lot of challenges. It is not in a good condition. We are not having a good standing at the global level when it comes to shipping industry. So first of all, let's understand the basic part. If you look at the map of India, we have total 8,000 kilometer long coastline. Now it includes 32 shipyards, 12 major and 200 minor ports. You should have an understanding how many ports do we have. So total 12 major ports are there and around 200 minor ports are there. And all these ports are important for our shipping industry. Now if you look at the shipbuilding industry to be specific, India's shipbuilding industry is projected or valued around $90 million in 2022, and we are saying it has potential of reaching or growing up to 8,120 million by 2033. Now, we are not a big player as such, but if you look at the leading shipbuilding players around the world, then China, South Korea are actually leading. After that, Japan, then India, then Germany, then USA. This is how you see. Now, what are the key challenges India's shipbuilding industry is facing? Now, first is related to the scalability. See, Indians are very much dependent on the old ships, and we are not investing much of our amount on building the new ships. So the investment is lacking and we are dependent over here. Second thing, those who are going to invest, they find it challenging because of some bureaucratic delays. We have to go through many departments. We have to get clearance from many people or many authorities, because of which also these new projects, they suffer. So scalability is a problem or a challenge for us. The second challenge is the cost part, cost efficiency part. What happens is, in India, whenever we are importing something, or let's say we are building a ship, you will see that there is 35% custom duty. And also those who want some kind of money as loan for their working capital, you will see that the interest rate is relatively high as compared to other countries, because of which we do not have cost efficiency. Third, the productivity optimization part. See, if you want better productivity, you will have to focus on the research and development part. But in India, we don't focus much on the research and development because investment made in the research and development part. Then we are dependent on the imported raw materials like the steel plates. We are very much dependent on imported part. We have to develop it all on our own, and for that this R&D part has to be worked. Then for this quality excellence, well, we are not focusing on R&D, we are not focusing on research infrastructure. So obviously there will be quality which is relatively degraded. And we see that quality aspect matters a lot, especially if you are a new player in the shipping industry and you do not have much resources. And then you are getting challenges in terms of quality, because the quality standard is continuously rising. And that is a challenging thing for us, especially the smaller suppliers or new suppliers. Then there is angle of sustainability. We have an inverted duty structure, very interesting thing. So if you are importing entire new ship, then in that case you are not paying any custom duty as such. But if you are buying or importing the raw material required for that, for building a ship, you are paying custom duty. So this is a reverse kind of duty structure that we have, because of which our shipbuilding industry is not becoming better, is not developing. Now we have some good examples of some global leaders. For example, we have South Korea, who dominates this entire market. So they are dominating shipbuilding through government subsidies, tax incentives, foreign investment, etc. Similarly, we have China, who is doing really good in this sector. We have Japan, who is doing really good in this. So we have to learn from these examples. Now, what all government initiatives that have been taken to build our shipping industry or shipbuilding industry, or to take care of this entire sector? So we have this Maritime Development Fund. So if you look at the Union budget of 2025, this Maritime Development Fund is being established. So this fund includes the initial amount of 25,000 crore rupees. So government is going to provide this kind of financial assistance. Now here government is saying that government will provide or contribute 49% of this fund. Now it is the responsibility of the other side to come up with the remaining fund. So responsibility lies with the major port authorities or government entities, central public sector enterprises, or the private sector, etc. Then we have this Sagar Mala program brought in the year 2015. Now this program wants that we should have development which is led by ports. So first we will develop our ports, and these ports will then lead to further development or industrialization of India. Okay, so already it has identified 839 projects and approximately 5.5 lakh crore is being invested on this particular project. It's a flagship initiative. Then we have Maritime India Vision 2030. So this vision is for the year 2030, by which we are expecting that we are going to build infrastructure. So infrastructure development, over 150 initiatives across 10 interconnected themes. So this is how what India is planning. By 2030 we want to become global leader in the maritime field. For that we have this vision. Okay, so all these are important initiatives by the government of India. Okay, now the next article, the fourth article, this one is related to the forest lands. Now here we are going to deal with Forest Conservation Act of 1980. It is important for prelims as well as mains. Now please read this previous year question. I'll give you 10 seconds to read it. Done? So this question specifically focuses on Indian Forest Act 1927. Important act, and you should have a decent idea about this act. And then forest dwellers have this right. So if forest dwellers have right, under which particular act they have the right? So you should have brief idea about all of that. Okay. Now moving ahead with the article. Supreme Court of India has given a ruling. Under this ruling, Supreme Court is saying that although we are doing development, that doesn't mean you are going to destroy each and every forest. In case government wants to build a road, any kind of infrastructure, let's say we call it linear projects. So linear projects like will include any project wherein you're building infrastructure in a linear manner. There will be a single line. For example, a road will be in a linear pattern. A railway line will be in a linear pattern. A pipeline will be in a linear pattern. So if government is going ahead with any linear project, here there is a possibility government will have to acquire a forest land. They have to cut forest land. It is possible. So Supreme Court is saying you cannot do this unless you are doing afforestation. That means to compensate for those forest land, if you have destroyed any forest land to build these projects, then it is your responsibility to come up with a new forest land. So you have to do afforestation. You have to take any barren land and you have to develop a new forest over there to compensate for this forest. Okay, this is the ruling. Now when we are looking at this particular ruling, we are looking at the 2023 amendment which was made to this Forest Conservation Act 1980, because after this amendment only this debate got ignited about development versus this conservation of forest. So first look at this Forest Conservation Act 1980. Now this act came in 1980, and the core theme of this act is to ensure that if you have a forest land, then that forest land should not be diverted for any other purpose, any non-forest purpose. It should not be done. But many a times people do this. So regulating this aspect, wherever the diversion of forest land is being done for any non-forest purpose, that should be regulated, and that regulation is done under this particular act which came into picture in the year 1980. Now this act specifically says that there will be a key role played by central government. Let's say you have a state government or local authority who want to de-reserve a particular forest. So they can't do it without permission or prior approval of the central government. And what central government can do? They can inquire all the things by establishing an advisory committee. Okay, that advisory committee is going to provide with all the proposal, all the information, so that we can ensure that a regulated land diversion takes place. Then in case people are not doing this, then there will be penalties also for violation of these laws. For example, you will be given 15 days of imprisonment for violating this Forest Conservation Act 1980. Now we said in the year 2023 an amendment was made, and this amendment specifically focused on this definition aspect. See, very interestingly, the definition of forest is very much interesting in our legal system, because at the national level, when we look at what look at any forest, and if we want that we should have a uniform definition of forest, the answer is there is no definition. So right now we do not have any definition which can be said as uniform definition throughout India. Rather, every state government comes up with its own definition. Now, if you look at this 2023 amendment, first of all, what they did, they provided some exemption to some particular lands. So exemption was given to land within 100 kilometers of India's international borders. So government was saying, for the purpose of national security, we might require this land, we might have to take any action, we might need to develop some infrastructure in this land, and that's why we might need to take actions which can destroy forest land in this area. So they have given exception. Second, there is expansion of some permissible activities. So in case if someone is establishing a zoo, safari, any ecotourism activity, in that case, these forest areas can be allowed. Then forest land can be assigned, and that assignment of forest land to any entity, any government entity or anyone, that will be done only with the approval of central government. So any condition which is specified by central government, first you have to complete that thing, then only it will be assigned. Okay, and as I said, the definition part is a complicated part over here. We do not have a clear definition in India, and role of state becomes very important when we talk about the definition of forests. And we have legal basis for states authority. Why we say that states have the main role? It's not the central government who is giving any uniform definition, because we have a judgment in the year 1996, T.N. Godavarman Tirumulpad versus Union of India. In this case, Supreme Court clearly said that there will be role of state governments or the states in defining what will be included in the forest. So this is going on. But here it is being expected that we will adhere to the guideline given under this particular case till the time all the state governments come up with their consolidated definition or consolidated record of all the forest lands they have. So we are expecting all these things to take place, after which we can say we have a good definition available with us. Okay, now let's move ahead with some of the practice questions. We have mains practice question and prelims practice question. Discuss the gaps in India's labor laws regarding mental health protections, particularly for blue collar workers, and suggest reforms to ensure a comprehensive well being framework. Now, in this question, you should start the answer with the mental well being, or you can give some data which shows that mental well being is not in a good condition, or something. For example, you can talk about labor code also, you can give the data provided by WHO also. Now you can show the gaps that are there in labor laws. So you are talking about all the labor laws, you can show the gap in each of them. So this code on social security, industrial relations. every code you can show that. Then talk about impact on blue collar workers to be very specific. Okay. Then you can talk about the mechanisms we already have, the conventions we already have, best practices we have, WHO guidelines we have, and the way forward can be given. This is how you can structure your answer. And this is a very good line. India's workforce success lies in Shrameva Jayate alongside Mansik Swasthya Jayate. So such catchy lines can be written in the conclusion to get good marks. Okay. Now, the prelims practice question are for your homework. Okay. So I expect all of you to go ahead with all these questions. I'll just read out the questions for you. So, with reference to Maritime Development Fund, consider the following statements. It was announced as part of Union Budget 2025-26. The government will contribute 49% of this fund, while the remaining will be mobilized from major port authorities, other government entities, central public sector enterprises, financial institutions, and private sector. So this is a homework for you. You can attempt it even from the website directly. So you will have some links given in the comment box from which you can directly reach out to the website where you can attempt this question. Okay. Second, Forest Conservation Act 1980. It mandates prior approval from the central government before diverting forest land for non-forest purposes. Second, the act applies uniformly to all forests, including private and community owned forests. Okay. Then the third question is, ethanol is widely used in various industries. Which of the following applications of ethanol is incorrect? Now this is a very easy question. You can easily attempt it. Okay. So all these were the articles important for the examination. Okay. We'll meet in the next session. Thank you so much for joining.